Welcome to JustStarTrek.com. Today I'm joined by Paddy Porter, my favourite red shirt.
Live long and prosper. Engineering branch, by the way.
Not security.
Not the ones that get killed.
And we're going to be talking about our thoughts on particularly the second half of Star Trek Discovery, and then just summarising what our thoughts and feelings were about the whole season and what our hopes are for season 2. So Paddy, love it or hate it?
I love it, I think. Well, I like it a lot. I think it's probably what Star Trek needed, because all the other previous iterations had sort of run their natural course, and as I said in the previous video we did, I think you also said they were sort of rehashing some of the same old ideas. So I like it a lot. I like the season-long arc. I like the Klingon thing. It's probably good that it's come to a conclusion, although we'll maybe come back to the actual conclusion itself.
Yeah.
And that's now done and dusted. So next season will hopefully be more of the Star Trek that you like, which is more exploratory out there amongst finding new races, new civilizations, and that sort of thing. So yes, I would say, if I was going to score out of 10, I'd say about 8.5.
That's a very high score there, Paddy.
Yeah.
For me personally,
Yeah.
I would give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10, and I'll tell you why. I just felt at points it wasn't Star Trek at all. It was Game of Thrones. It was 24 with the episodic continuation. You have lots of melodrama, lots of intense, forced intensity. And I thought to myself, in previous iterations of Star Trek, you've got Next Generation, the original series, Voyager, inspiring scientists and inspiring future astronauts to go out there and explore and become scientists and make a difference in this world. If someone looks at Star Trek Discovery, ignoring all the heritage of Star Trek, what do they pull out from it? Maybe a sense of family, but there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of darkness. Where's the inspiration? Where's the discovery?
Well, let's not do Star Trek into darkness. I think because it was essentially a war-based arc over a season, it has to be dark. It has to be gritty. It has to be action-based, because that's what generally war is. You know, I served a nuclear submarine. I was down in the Falklands during the Falklands War, and certainly when you're in those sort of combat environments, it is very intense. You know, there's not much room for triviality. But equally, there are long periods where you sat around doing nothing. It's slightly different in Star Trek because they've got the ship that can jump from anywhere to anywhere. You know, so they can always be in the action. So yes, I think that was probably a function of the storyline they were trying to tell. As it turns out, the captain, who I know you were a big fan of, wasn't quite the person we all expected.
Yeah,
So complete utter opposite of what we hoped and wanted for him and the future. And clearly a lot of the stuff that they were doing was driven by him.
Yeah.
And as they say, the clues were there.
Yeah, absolutely. I
But
mean,
we just didn't see them.
we predicted that, I thought Lorca was going to have more of a prominent role, where he did, but perhaps for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So they certainly pulled the wool over our eyes in that respect.
Yeah.
We also predicted the sleeper agent, but we weren't quite sure with Ash Tyler. That proved to be no big surprise there.
Yeah.
You predicted about the mirror universe and them landing there with the mid-season break, and yes, we landed in the mirror universe. I felt the first episode was good. You had Tilly almost in this comedic role, and Lorca doing a Scottish accent, which was brilliant.
Well, you know, as I said in the last one, Montgomery Scott and I were companions at the academy,
Yeah.
and I know Scotty would have been very impressed with the Highland accent that Lorca produced,
Yeah.
and it was a moment of comedy gold, I think, and the way they were making it up almost on the hoof. And Tilly, I think she's going to be a very interesting character for season 2, because that little thing that dropped on her shoulder.
Yeah. So here's a question for you:
Yeah.
Is it the Doctor, or is it the good version of Lorca that landed on her shoulder, or
All
something
right,
else?
So you're saying that within that spot there's a character.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hadn't considered that really, but there's clearly something from the network, the mycelial network, that has landed on her shoulder, and what that's going to be, I don't know. I think there'll be some time finding that out, because clearly there's another very obvious thing that we have to work out first that's going to happen in the next season. But yeah, I think she's going to be a very And she has grown as a character, Tilly. She was sort of, when she arrived, she was very nervous and, you know, but she seeks out the underdog always. She's not, doesn't have any problem in getting up and
Yeah.
leaving her table and going sitting on Tyler's table when everyone now realises he's Vok, and speak to him. And she did the same when Burnham arrived. So she doesn't have a problem with finding people who need a bit of, you know, who are isolated and being their friends.
So effectively, she's a poor man's counsellor.
Well, she's no Deanna Troy, is she? But it's, I don't even think she's a counsellor. She's just somebody who sticks up for the underdog, really.
One thing that I miss with Discovery, and I hope season 2 will address this, is that traditionally with Star Trek, you have a bridge crew. You have your staple 6, 7, 8 characters, and you get to know them in the first season. By the end of it, you know what the family unit is. You know how each one ticks. With Discovery, I don't know half of who the bridge crew are. I know Burnham, you know Lorca, you know, God rest his soul, wherever he may be. And you know a couple of other... Saru. We'll come back to him very shortly. But I just miss that family feel where traditionally you have Picard as the fatherhead and everyone else supports him. They encounter different problems and they work together. Whereas with Discovery, everyone's stabbing each other or kicking each other in turbolifts. You've got this this unity, and I miss that cohesiveness of Star Trek, that family feel.
Well, I certainly think HR would have a few problems with some of the shenanigans that have been going on. But I feel, I do agree with you, those characters have been sort of on the sideline. I suspect because it's been very much focused on Lorca's drive to get back to the Mirror Universe, which obviously only became apparent later on in the actual second half. And obviously the dynamic with Burnham and Saru between those two. And I suspect, and I hope, and I think they will start to explore further those other bridge characters who have pretty much just played a little bit of a peripheral role. I mean, it has always been the sort of the 6 or the 7, were the sort of the mainstay of the episode and the series, and up until now it's only really been 3.
Yeah. And you've got Admiral Cornwell jumping in, you've got Sarek jumping in, which has been getting on my nerves a little bit because he just conveniently pops up, answers a moral dilemma and buggers off again. One character I really like, and probably my favourite out of
just
all...
to go back to that, Cornwell, Lorca must have thought all his Christmases come at once when she came back and they ended up in bed. But anyway, let's not go there.
That's another episode. So, Saru, Doug Jones, what a very well written and well acted character. You started with this weakling, this almost coward, where he looks at the captain's chair with fear.
There's things on his neck.
The little ganglia, which apparently tastes quite nice.
Get between your teeth there.
But I love his arc and how he's found his confidence. He's reconciled with Burnham to a certain extent, and I feel that he's almost Commander material.
Well, I think you might have given the show 5.5 out of 10, but I suspect you'd be giving him about 9 out of 10.
Yeah, he's a very well written character and very well acted. You know, I know he does sometimes leave comments on Twitter, which is great because he's interacting with the fans. He cares, and it shows that he cares, and he's well written.
Well, I think anyone who has to act with that amount of prosthetics on, where really, you know, it's very hard for facial expressions to come out. He has to use other methods, whether it's the sort of the turning of the head or the sort of the gesticulation of the hands or the walk. I think it's been incredible that he has managed to bring that character to where it is, and in fact, I would probably say he's going to turn out to be one of the best loved Star Trek characters, you know, that has ever been.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I look forward to seeing how he develops. One thing I'd like to mention, Paddy, is the fact that Discovery keeps referencing previous Star Trek. Yeah. And
there's lots of little Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, lots of Easter eggs, and I don't mind that. That's fine. The Archer references, the Enterprise reference, that's fine. I can live with that. But it's the taking of these concepts like Mirror Universe and the Enterprise appearing at the end. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the Enterprise. When I started seeing the NCC-17, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And when it pulled up, that design looks 100 times better than what the J.J. Abrams design of the Enterprise. I thought it was very, very in keeping with that universe. But it's almost like the writers are too lazy to create their own universe. They have to rely on previous iterations of Star Trek to go, here guys, here's a little carrot, here's a little bit of Enterprise, make sure you watch for season 2. We haven't built up enough yet of our own characters, our own stories, in order to justify you coming back. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I like the Mirror Universe episodes. I always think they show what we could have become had we not gone down the route that we would hope to go down, which has sort of been exploratory and out there making peace with other civilizations. And I read some of the comments on our video from last time, and somebody made a very good point, and it said, and a lot of television reflects the time in which it is created. So when the original series was created, you know, the Romulans were pretty much the sort of the Chinese, and the Klingons were the sort of Russians. It was a Cold War sort of atmosphere going on. And now we live in very troubled times. There's lots of conflicts going on between different nations on Earth, and I think they're just sort of reflecting that, while at the same time realising they've got to engage a new audience. You know, the older Star Trek audience is dying out. So if you want Star Trek to continue, you have to cater to a new audience,
Yeah.
the new generation, as we call it, or the next generation of viewers, and that's what they're doing. And it's very much, you mentioned Game of Thrones. I've never seen Game of Thrones. I must be probably the only person in the universe that hasn't. But that's very much typical of the episodic television today. It is conflict based.
Well, a few of the comments on Twitter and YouTube, whatever else, and some of the guys have said, look, we live in dark times,
Yeah.
and it's a reflection of that. Now, I disagree with that, Paddy. I don't think we live in dark times at the moment, despite what the media may say. If you look at when Gene Roddenberry wrote Star Trek back in the early to mid-60s, you know, they were almost nuking each other. Those were dark, serious times where the realistic prospect of annihilation was you know, at the front of people's minds. And yet he created this series which presented hope and a great future for humanity. And I think perhaps we've been sucked into this modern style of television storytelling where it has to be dark, where it has to be intense, where it has to be violent. And I think Star Trek's always stood apart from that. Don't get me wrong, it has had its episodes, a little arc perhaps, but Star Trek's always been about the future, giving people hope and optimism and inspiring people. And I don't think the first season has really done a great job of that.
I would agree with you. It is essentially, as I said before, an arc of episodes that have been based on a war, where you don't get the chance to, you know, before you can do all those grand things, you have to defeat your enemy. Because if you don't defeat your enemy, you'll never be able to do those. So,
Yeah.
and of course, the Discovery was an ideal weapon to be able to achieve that, because of course it could jump from anywhere to anywhere, could get in, could get out, SAS style, you know, get in, do the job, get out, don't hang around. Whereas the other warships were involved in more closer combat with each other and couldn't move from there to there just like that. But I think now that's finished, I would hope that we would return to some of the sort of Star Trek elements that
Yeah.
Roddenberry had thought about when he set up Wagon Train to the Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope season 2, the writers will take on board some of the feedback. Don't get me wrong, Discovery's been very popular and it has appealed to a brand new audience, and perhaps that's what Star Trek needs. It needs that fresh blood. I mean, I know my wife, she loves it, and she's watched a few episodes before because she had to, because she's married to me.
Yeah.
But she absolutely loves Discovery, and I think it appeals to that new audience, and perhaps that's a good thing. And we as older fans, we need to adapt to it. But there's still, for me, the fundamentals of Star Trek are exploration and science, and I'm hoping that in season 2 we're going to see a lot more of that.
Well, I hope so too, but I just too much technobabble though. It's, you know, it's like the ship's about to explode and somebody says, "Oh, let's cross, you know, that array with this array, and we'll send a tachyon pulse, and we do it." And you know, it all gets a bit too.
Don't knock the tachyon
Yeah,
pulse,
no,
Paddy. I mean, you do
absolutely.
need them now and again.
So-
Okay, so overall, you were surprised and quite pleased then.
Yeah, I didn't go into it with any expectations, really. I kept a very open mind, and I know prior to it starting, there was lots of people coming in and then leaving, and you know, the initial graphics, you know, with the ship didn't look very good, and but I think they've done very well, and they've kept things quite secret. You know, Lorca was doing interviews, you know, and knowing that he had done what he'd done, and he was, you know, playing the script really well
Yeah.
in those interviews at the end of the sort of the first half of the season,
Yeah.
knowing that actually he had known all along that he was a Terran captain trying to get back to his own universe so he could then become emperor.
Yeah,
You know, and I love the way they recapped all the clues. They were there, but there was, I don't think anyone, or very few people would even have, while watching it,
yeah,
noticed that. But they clearly had thought the whole season through and written those things in.
yeah,
You know, like the eating the sort of little ganglia
Oh,
things,
yeah.
and you know the tardigrade, which I think we said at the time that wasn't very Starfleet using a sentient being, which sort of goes against Starfleet protocol to,
Yeah.
to transport a ship around the galaxy. So
And let's not forget genocide. You know,
Yeah.
they advocated genocide, Sarek and Cornwell,
yeah.
and then by the end of it, they're handing out medals for peace and everything like that.
If I had one criticism or big criticism of it, I thought the last episode was
Rushed.
a little bit rushed. It was a bit like Voyager coming home. You know, they never really got their homecoming they deserved. It was like, oh, we've gone down all the transwarp corridor thing,
Yeah,
and then suddenly we're back home, and that was it.
yeah,
It was a bit like the end of Enterprise. They never really got their send off because it was all a holodeck simulation with Riker and Troy. So, you know, I do feel, and it was a very, you know, we're into the heart of Kronos. You know, we can blow it up. You know, of course, we knew that wouldn't happen because Kronos exists, you know, from the original series onwards. But then they decided not to do it because, for the values you've just said, it's not Star Trek, it's not Starfleet.
yeah.
You know, policy to basically commit genocide.
Yeah.
and they held a higher ground.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the Klingon battle cruisers, which were sort of closing in on Earth, suddenly turn around.
Yeah, it's-
I don't think that would have happened. They'd
No,
have just
it's
carried on.
Come on, guys, turn around now.
Yeah,
You've had a
yeah,
long journey.
yeah.
You know, it's not the Klingon way.
Yeah.
So we have to ignore these little irregularities.
But
haven't
but I suppose they had to bring it to a close somehow. You know, while Discovery was away, the Klingons had advanced. There was no Federation space. They're completely overrun. So there had to be some plot device that sort of said, well, let's reset it. And
Yeah.
that probably was the best way of doing it. Otherwise, you just carry on having a battle
Yeah.
after battle after battle after battle.
So I hope for season 2 we're going to have more episodic, standalone episodes, a bit of discovery, heaven
Yeah.
forbid, a bit of new world seeking, which is great, more character development really, and give us some nice, slow moving, tense, dramatic space battles. That'd be nice, rather than whoever's editing them is obviously on some kind of speed, because it'd be nice to appreciate what all that money's been spent on the special effects rather than just whirring everything so quickly.
And I think it's the linking into the Enterprise as well, which Captain Pike,
Yeah.
you know, Sarek was on the way to Vulcan when
Perhaps
the
he's going to
Enterprise
see.
turns up.
Will there be a Spock appearance?
Yeah. Or if he doesn't appear, will he be referenced in some way? And of course, Burnham and Spock are connected,
Mm-hmm.
you know, through Sarek. So yes, I think that's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah. So, you've heard our thoughts. We would love to hear your thoughts about the whole season of Discovery and whether you're going to continue watching season 2 or whether it floated your boat or perhaps you weren't too happy with it. But we would love to hear what you think of it. So please leave your comments below and we'll catch you soon on juststartrek.com. So I've been Angelos.
I've been Paddy.
Live long and prosper.